We're now the American Museum and Gardens with an ampersand. And it's something that we've been working towards for the last 5 or 6 years. We decided when we celebrated our 50th anniversary that we would have a strategic planning process. We would have a forward plan. And one of the major features of it, perhaps the most important one, was to develop the estate. And we thought about the various ways of doing that. First thing we did was to renovate the Mount Vernon garden, which was no longer historically accurate. So that happened mostly last year, and it's been finished this year. And then we've had the Washington-based architectural firm of Van Sweden come to us. They have provided a master plan for the estate. The trustees and I decided that we would focus on the largest and most central of the garden options, which is what they were calling the New American Garden. Something that is inspired by Thomas Jefferson's Monticello, which has a winding walk. We now have a winding way, and it will link the manor house, which you see over here, all the way down to the Mount Vernon Garden. So it's as if the manor house goes to Jefferson and then goes down to George Washington.
You are finally, I would think, really taking advantage of the location of this house and the amazing view.
Yeah, it's a fabulous view. We had the American ambassador here last Saturday for the preview for all the supporters, many of whom flew over from the States. And he was just amazed. He said, in a year of being in this country, he's never seen a view as beautiful as this, which I hope continues to be the case. But what I'll say is that we have spent a good deal of time and effort trying to improve the view. Obviously, the view remains the same, but there was blockage before. We had shrubs and trees here on the east lawn. We had them down on the south lawn. They've all disappeared. We won't have any new planting that will impede the view in any way. In addition to that, this is, we think, probably the most disability accessible garden in this part of the country. It isn't complete yet. All of our different options for people who have difficulty walking or who are in wheelchairs or who have prams. But by the spring, absolutely everything from the parking area all the way up to the new pavilions, all the way down into Mount Vernon will be accessible.
Richard, it's a garden that tells a story through sculpture. Could you explain?
Well, there are two forms of sculpture here. One is natural, that is, we have a lot of Native American plants. Many of them are associated with prairie style. And there's a kind of bunching and clumping of plants that is typical of the Van Sweden style. Van Sweden is the name of the firm in Washington that we have been partnering with. The second form of sculpture is actual. It's in bronze, and there are 6 oversized bronze busts of important American figures here. We've got Abraham Lincoln, the great emancipator. We've got 4 worthies that lead you down to the Mount Vernon garden. They are Winston Churchill, who gave his first political address here and who was half American. Then we go on to Eleanor Roosevelt, the greatest of all of our first ladies. Then to Benjamin Franklin. Then to Alexander Hamilton. So that if you can't get tickets to the musical, you can always see Hamilton here. And then finally Harriet Tubman, an escaped slave from the South who became an important figure in American political and cultural life. So you have, as you were saying earlier, the great emancipator and the emancipated.
You were obviously hoping your gardens achieve the same sort of reputation as your American museum in time.
Yeah, well, we're looking for a broader audience. There are some people who would be interested in the gardens, less so the museum. We've always had people interested in the museum, and it's really been hard to sell them the gardens as well, because the Mount Vernon garden was tucked away. You couldn't see it. Now it's open to the view. And everyone knows that the gardens are here and that they're important because we have 2 pavilions built in a rather interestingly oriental style, reflecting the China trade that the United States had in the 19th century. So as you approach the American Museum, you're going to see the gardens just as soon as you see the manor house itself.